Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I'm so thrilled you're tuning in today because we're about to take a really fascinating journey right beneath the streets and behind the walls of Milwaukee. Now, if you live in Brew City, you already know the architecture is absolutely stunning, but today, we're focusing on the hidden infrastructure that actually keeps these historic homes running. We're going to unpack the specific, and let's be real, sometimes totally chaotic, anatomy of a Milwaukee plumbing crisis, exploring the unique geographical and historical forces at play literally right beneath your feet.
Okay, let's dive into this by asking a pretty chilling question. Why do pipes that have faithfully survived 80 brutal Wisconsin winters suddenly decide to just burst on a seemingly random Tuesday? I mean, it kind of feels like a betrayal, doesn't it? You'd naturally think that if a pipe made it through the blizzard of 47, it's got to be invincible by now. But the hard truth is, the materials lurking in older Milwaukee homes aren't building strength over time. Nope, they're slowly, silently accumulating stress. And the primary villain behind all this stress is something uniquely tied to our local climate.
Enter the freeze-thaw cycle. Guys, this is basically an environmental wrecking ball that is constantly waging war against the city's aging underground systems. Here's how it works. When water seeps into tiny, almost microscopic cracks in aging pipes or even just the surrounding soil, and then temperatures completely plummet, that water expands as it turns to ice. And this expansion exerts just incredible pressure, turning tiny little hairline fractures into catastrophic, complete breaks. So when spring finally arrives and the ice thaws out, the structural integrity of that pipe is completely gone, and water just flows freely wherever it wants.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, Milwaukee's unique challenges. Second, neighborhood-specific pipe problems. Third, demystifying local plumbing costs. Fourth, the anatomy of an emergency. And finally, the elite plumbing solution.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Milwaukee's unique plumbing challenges.
We really have to look at how the very foundation of the city is literally working against its beautifully crafted century-old housing stock. Because honestly, Milwaukee's infrastructure faces a perfect storm. First off, the city sits on shifting clay soil. As the moisture levels change, this clay expands and contracts, which puts immense physical stress on rigid underground pipes. Add to that the dramatic seasonal water table fluctuations, especially if you're near the river, and you've got a geological wrestling match happening right under your basement. Plus, the vast majority of the city's housing stock was built between 1890 and 1950. That means thousands of these homes are still relying on their original galvanized steel supply lines and clay tile sewers. And here's the real kicker. Milwaukee Waterworks delivers fantastic high-pressure water. It's awesome for your morning shower, sure, but that exact same high pressure, it's actively accelerating pinhole leaks in those century-old, corroded steel pipes.
Moving on to Section 2, neighborhood-specific pipe problems.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that in Milwaukee, your zip code might as well be a diagnostic code for your plumbing. These threats are incredibly hyperlocal. Just look at Wauwatosa. Beautiful, mature, tree-lined streets, right? Well, those gorgeous trees have roots that are relentlessly seeking water, which makes them absolutely notorious for intruding into older clay tile sewers. Contrast that with Shorewood, where being so close to Lake Michigan means groundwater infiltration during spring thaws is just a massive headache. Over in Riverwest, homes built in the 1890s are facing the inevitable failure of their original cast iron stacks and galvanized pipes. And down in the historic Third Ward, those stunning converted industrial lofts, they have to contend with a combined sewer system that can easily lead to basement backups during heavy rains. It's crazy, but your neighborhood's history completely dictates your plumbing threats.
Okay, let's get into Section 3, demystifying local plumbing costs.
Let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room, contractor pricing. Now, contractor pricing can often feel like some sort of dark art, but we're going to lay out some radical financial transparency right now, all based on local data. So, $90 to $180. That right there is the standard hourly rate for Milwaukee plumbers. It mostly depends on the complexity of the job and whether you're working with an apprentice or a master plumber. But if you have a freeze-thaw emergency that hits on a holiday, or say, in the dead of night, you need to be fully prepared for that rate to jump to anywhere from $150 to $300 an hour. When pipes burst in sub-zero temperatures, you're absolutely paying a premium for immediate, highly skilled intervention.
And what about renovations? Well, $10,000 is a solid baseline for a small bathroom renovation in Milwaukee, and that's assuming you keep the exact same layout. But here's the catch. If you open up those walls and realize, oh no, we need to move the drains, or if you discover an aging cast iron stack that desperately needs replacing, that $10,000 budget is going to get consumed incredibly fast.
So the crucial point is, opening up the walls of an older Milwaukee home almost always reveals some pretty expensive surprises. You really have to factor in these common hidden costs.
Permit fees alone will run you between $50 and $300. And because so many of these homes are pre-1980s, you might stumble into asbestos abatement, which easily adds thousands to the bill. Discovering old galvanized or lead pipes that absolutely must be replaced once the walls are open, that can tack on another $1,500 to $5,000 right there. And hey, if you have those Wauwatosa tree roots we talked about earlier, clearing and lining those lines is another really hefty fee.
Now, this harsh reality naturally brings up the whole debate of DIY versus professional plumbing. And look, I get it. The temptation to save money is so strong. DIY is perfectly fine for minor surface tasks, like swapping out a shower head. But for anything behind the walls or underground, it's a massive risk. Professionals aren't just there to turn wrenches. They're actually required to navigate Milwaukee's strict permit laws. A botched DIY job can literally void your homeowner's insurance if it causes water damage. Plus, all work has to meet Wisconsin Administrative Code SPS 382, which dictates everything from proper venting to specific cross-connection controls just to protect the city's drinking water. So yeah, the stakes are pretty high.
Which brings us to Section 4, the anatomy of an emergency.
To really understand the visceral chaos of an active plumbing situation, consider this statement. A pipe that survived 80 Wisconsin winters can burst on the mildest day. That perfectly captures the underlying anxiety of owning an older home, and it really highlights the terrifyingly unpredictable nature of failing materials. Galvanized steel corrodes from the inside out. You literally can't see the danger. One day it holds perfectly fine, and the next day the structural integrity simply gives up.
And that brilliantly illustrates the exact scenario every single homeowner dreads. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. That corroded pipe finally gives way. Suddenly, Milwaukee's excellent high-pressure water system, the one you love for your morning showers, is rapidly pumping hundreds of gallons of water straight into your basement. You're half awake, stepping into freezing cold water, and the clock is just ticking on massive property damage. In that exact moment, you don't need a handy neighbor. You need a highly specialized, rapid response expert, immediately.
This leads us right into our final section, the Elite Plumbing Solution.
When chaos strikes, this is exactly where local experts, teams explicitly built to combat these citywide infrastructure issues, come in. Let's move to and see how this builds into a structured, stress-relieving process with Elite Plumbing Milwaukee. They operate on 3 distinct steps. Step 1 is contact and dispatch. You won't find any answering machines here. A 24/7 live dispatcher locates your specific Milwaukee neighborhood and sends the absolute closest available company truck. Step 2 is diagnosis and approval. The technician isn't just guessing, they actually provide visual evidence, like sewer camera footage, and hand you a printed, itemized estimate before any work even begins. And then step 3 is the repair and walkthrough. They execute an efficient fix, thoroughly test the operation, clean up the whole mess, and actually walk you through exactly what they did.
Now, what really sets this whole process apart is the deep, hyper-local expertise backing it up. Elite's plumbers average 12 years of experience working specifically in Milwaukee. That means they know the quirks of a 1920s Bayview bungalow versus a Shorewood colonial. They practice zero emergency calls subcontracting, meaning if you call Elite, an actual Elite employee is showing up at your door. Their trucks carry printed pricing guides to totally eliminate those hidden fees we discussed earlier. Plus, they utilize advanced trenchless technology, which, let me tell you, is an absolute game changer for navigating Milwaukee's rocky clay soil without totally tearing up your landscaping. And they back all of it with a solid 1-year labor guarantee. They are literally engineered for the exact threats this city throws at its homes.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, pretty provocative thought. Knowing what you now know about the shifting, freezing clay beneath us and the incredibly unpredictable nature of century-old materials, is your home's original plumbing a ticking time bomb just waiting for the next spring thaw? It's definitely a serious question to consider for the long-term health of your home. Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I highly, highly encourage you to go take a look at your own infrastructure before the next winter rolls in. Catch you next time.